Okay, welcome to this week's homework video. We are going to paint an egg from life. So I've got an egg and a white piece of paper, and that's what you're gonna need. And then you need a light. I'm gonna turn here to show you what kind of light I have. This is just a utility light from Home Depot. Shining on it to create a cast shadow and a highlight and all the things that we're used to looking at. We have painted light and shadow on a sphere from a photograph, and then we painted a sphere, a white sphere on a white background for in class, and we're gonna do another painting like that just to reinforce the concept and get more practice here. Spherical things are everywhere, and so when we're looking at light and shadow on objects, we're looking at some variation of light and shadow on a sphere typically, especially if we're looking at a face or a rounded object. And so this is going to help us a lot to really understand this as we go forward and paint things that are more complex. Okay, so I have measured out a 5 by 8 inch rectangle, which is what we did the last video and I believe the video before. So if you don't know how to center that on your paper, and remember to measure correctly and center it on your paper, go back and watch the beginning of one of the other videos. It is hard for me to do that here on the easel, and you should be capable of doing that by now. I've taped this right up to the edge of my rectangle so that I've essentially masked the area, and so I can paint over this tape, and when I take the tape away, it's going to reveal a crisp line of paint with a border around the edge showing the paper. So the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to draw the egg with my pencil. I could do this in paint. I could 100% do this in paint, but I'm going to do it in pencil. So if you want to just go ahead and start painting, that's fine. I'm going to put the egg a little bit off center because that's going to be more interesting than centering the egg. And then I'm going to draw at least the basic part of this cast shadow. I'm going to look for my intersection points. I'm going to try to note the proportions and the shape of this. Okay, so there's my egg and my cast shadow, and I'm going to have to push this out a little bit further when I finally paint it. Okay, so on my palette, I have, and I'll hold this up to show it to you. I have one spot of black, and I have 2 spots of white. So take the time to put that on your palette. Okay, and I'll show you what it's going to look like. Okay, and then I'm going to mix a mid-tone gray. I have 2 cups of water. I have a clean water and a dirty water. I have my paintbrushes nearby. It's hard for me to show you the palette, so I'm just going to tell you what I'm doing on the palette, and you can mix with me as you go along. So I'm going to start as I have been doing with 3 values. I'm going to decide for everything to be white, black, or this mid-tone, and then we'll go from there. Okay. And I'm going to take a brush that's like relatively big. And first I'm going to paint the white this time. So our paper is this slightly purplish gray. So when I paint, I can see the difference. When I paint with white, I can see the difference between the white and the paper. And my first layer of paint is going to soak a little bit into the paper. And it's not going to be fully opaque. I don't want to get thick brush strokes on here because I don't want to fight with the texture that would make. I want to be able to change my mind about where everything goes, and I want to have nice subtle transitions. So I want to be careful about not putting ridges of paint up here on my canvas. So I can see my table actually. I'm gonna, just to add a little bit of interest to this, I'm gonna show the table as a mid-tone. So I was gonna run the white all the way to the top, but I can see the table right about here in relationship to the egg. The camera is actually showing you the egg a little bit higher. Let's see. Okay. I'm at a slightly different angle than the camera from the egg, but I think you're going to be able to see what I'm doing. And you shouldn't really be painting from my egg. You should be painting from your egg. So we'll see how this goes. Okay, so I'm going to count the oak table or the oak countertop as a mid-tone. And I'm going to put that in here. So as I said in class, you want to paint your specific egg or sphere or whatever it is. You don't want to generalize because that's not interesting. It's the specific thing that you're looking at that is interesting. Okay, I'm going to count this as a mid-tone, rolling right around here and down here and over here in this distortion of the shadow. Okay, and this part of the core shadow is kind of gray. Count this as my darkest dark. I don't have any true black in here. Well, maybe right here in the umbra, but I have to pick. I have to exaggerate, and I only have 3 values, so I'm gonna make the 3 values, some of them darker than they really are, just to get started. If I count everything as middle gray or everything as darkest dark, I don't have any contrast between areas, and that doesn't help me map the value on here. Okay, so I'm going to ignore my highlight, and I'm going to count all of this as white. I could make a different choice, but I'm going to see how this goes. Okay, I got a little black in my white. I'm going to go in and paint that out. Okay, so I have a basic value map here of where I'm going. And I'm going to change the shape of this just a little bit right off the bat. Okay, I'm having trouble with black in my brush. So now I'm going to mix more values, just like we did last week. And you can do this with me, but I'm gonna move some, well, you should do this with me. We're gonna move some of the mid-tone gray to the left and some to the right. I'm gonna show you this. So here's my palette. And this is my mid-tone gray, and I move some over here and some over here. So I'm gonna mix some of this with white and some of it with black, and I'm gonna make 2 more values. So I'm gonna mix some, move some over, mix it with white again, mix some, move some over, mix it with black again. So I'm gonna do that in real time, and you should do it with me. So I'm doing the white one first. And I have a value that is lighter than what I had. But it's still not a really light white, so I'm gonna move part of it over. Okay, and I'll show you again what I'm doing. Okay, so I'm out of white. I'm gonna have to add some white to my palette here, but this is my mid-tone gray. Here I've moved over and mixed some white, and then I've moved part of that over here, and I'm gonna mix this with some more white. Especially because so many of this, the areas of this egg are very light, close to white, but not quite. I need to make sure I have a really good light gray. And I want to make sure that it's mixed really thoroughly so that it doesn't have any colors mixed together. Doesn't look marbleized. Okay, and now I'm gonna add a little bit of black to my mid-tone gray that I've moved over. Now I'm gonna move a little bit of that over and mix it with some more black. And I want 7 even steps on my palette. I want black, white, original mid-tone gray, and then 2 intermediate darks and 2 intermediate lights. And I'll show you what I mean here in just a minute. I'll show you my palette again. Okay. So this is what I have now. So I have black and white, that's my original color. And then I've got the mid-tone gray here. I have a lighter gray and then a lightest gray, which is approaching white. And then I have a little bit darker gray, and then my darkest gray, which isn't quite black. And I'm gonna start to paint with these. So I have to decide where I'm gonna do this. I wanna look for an area where I can see difference in value between the two areas. So I'm gonna start right here, and I'm gonna make that white as I can. I think my whitest white is actually right here, and the highlight. But as I get into the egg and the shadow, I want to be able to compare to something, and I feel like this white is bordering a lot of things. Okay, now I've got to decide which one of my 7 values is right here. And I'm gonna say that is my 5th value, darkest. So this is my mid-tone gray mixed with black one time. And again, you should be observing your egg. Your lighting situation might be a lot different than mine. You're always gonna have cast shadows and core shadows and things like that, but your light could be coming from the other direction, something like that. Okay. Now I need to go one darker. So I'm gonna pick up my darkest gray without being black. And I'm gonna do this kind of ring that I see around the egg. Okay. Okay, now I'm picking up my mid-tone gray. I'm gonna go back into this a little bit, feather some of this out, make it lighter, and soften this transition. So as long as my paint is still wet, I can kind of blend it on the painting. this is my darkest dark right here, this umbra, this little puddle of darkness, shadow underneath here. So I'm actually gonna paint it my darkest gray, and then I'm gonna pick up the black and put that in here. Okay. Now, while this is wet, I want to look at this transition. So it's got a really fuzzy transition between the cast shadow here and the white of the paper. So I'm going to work on that a little bit by adding some lighter value there. I'm going to get my brush really clean, or actually I'm going to pick up another brush, and this one's going to be just for white. And I'm going to try to soften this transition right here. Okay. And as I look at this more, I see more things that I didn't notice before. So my perception becomes more sensitive as I work. This is kind of a microcosm of being an artist, is that you notice things one way, and then as you start to try to depict them accurately, you see more and more, and then you paint again and you see more. So okay, I'm gonna lighten this center area. That's too light. Okay. Now I'm gonna look at this distortion over here. And then I had picked up some black on my brush earlier, and we're gonna get rid of this by painting this area again. As you gain more control with your brush strokes themselves become more attractive, and you get a sense for how to turn the brush And so it's not just what you're painting, but how it's painted, and then also the abstraction of the paint itself that add layers to the painting. Okay. Might have that outer rim too dark. Okay, so before I fuss with that anymore, I'm gonna go in here to this area because I want to look at these relative values, and I want to keep working over the whole painting at once. So I'm gonna take my lightest gray and put it right underneath here for this reflected light. And that's okay for down here, but as I transition up to the top of the egg, or like really the middle of the egg, I want to go one darker. So I'm going to go to my second step down of gray, which is my third step on the 7 value scale of things that I've mixed here. Okay, I'm also going to put some of this up here just to see what happens. This black's still wet. Still getting in my way. Okay, I'm gonna go to my full mid-tone here. There's the nose of this egg is a little bit darker than the bottom part. And I'm gonna push the paint against the edge that I want to make there. Okay. And then here's my core shadow. So I got my darkest dark there. Okay, so if you had looked at my egg before I started painting the second layer here after I did my basic value scheme, and now you look at it, you can see that it's starting to have some really strong dimension. Okay, I'm gonna go in with my second lightest gray. Oh, that black is still wet. Okay, let me just get rid of it. Some more paint on my brush. Okay, we're getting close. So what I'm thinking about while I'm doing this is I want to get these edges defined and then feather these interior value areas together. Okay, it's a little bit darker than what I have it, so and I'm gonna approach with my darkest value. It's just around the rim there, and then right through here. Okay, Okay, so now I can see that I want this area to be lighter because I'm comparing this area with this area. And I still want to go darker. Just a little bit darker right here on this rim. Okay, and again, you're going to look at your egg and see what you can see here. And then this outside shape kind of feeds in here. Okay. I'm gonna hit this bottom reflected light one more time. This is my second value. I think this, yeah, that's too light. Because everything's relative, so even though that's pretty light, I still have to compare it to everything that's going on around. So now I'm down kind of in my, I'm a little past mid-tone with this color. That's too dark. I'm going to go back up. And I'm going to transition between these values to be a little bit softer. And so definitely you're just painting with me at this point. You're looking at your egg and I'm keeping you company. Because your egg is going to look unique from mine. You've already set up to paint. You've done the hard part. This is my second darkest. Still not light enough, but I'm gonna feather into it. Okay, this is my lightest gray. And the white's gonna blend just a little bit in here because the gray is still wet, so it's not gonna be my lightest light. So really I have another value here. I'm gonna get a different brush. Okay, I think I've gone too far over here. Gonna clean up this edge. Push it back. push this highlight right here. And this light rim right here. Okay, and then I'm gonna go back in with my white and just hit some of these outside areas again. Trying to make this just a little darker than white up there. So the colors of paint that we have are cool. The white that we have is cool. And the colors of your egg are probably warm. So there's only so much we can do. We're not painting in full color. So this is not gonna look like the same white as the egg. Just incidentally. Okay, I'm gonna put that highlight back in. Which my egg, I think, is actually lost, maybe because it dried out. Okay. I think I'm happy enough with this. And I'm gonna hit this back here one more time just to make it show a little more evenly. I think this is a little more interesting than just making the whole thing white, but without a lot of complication. I'm gonna push here to make this a straighter line. And my paper kind of turns up, so I'm gonna let it turn up because I'm painting what I can see. Okay. I think I'm gonna call this finished. And thanks for watching. I can't wait to see your eggs.